Hello folks, this is Sula speaking. You're listening to another video for Teamfight Tactics. So this is some footage taken from a normal game. I have not played much Teamfight Tactics recently. I think this is the only game I've played in about the last 2 weeks. And we're about to hit the end of set 8. So let's take some footage, put it on in the background, and do our traditional retrospective where we look back at set 8, try to talk about what things worked well, what things maybe didn't work so well, and think ahead a little bit to the upcoming future sets for Teamfight Tactics. So overall, I think that this was a solid set 8. I would say it was probably a little bit above average in pure I'm struggling for the right word here. In like completely objective terms, I think the set was probably better than most of the other ones that we had. But I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as some of the other sets, and I don't know if that's due to things that were inherent to the set design itself, or if it was just due to me getting more tired with the set overall. And excuse me, I'm still trying to get over some some sickness here. Or it might just be me getting more tired with Teamfight Tactics because this is, after all, set 8, which means that we have been playing Teamfight Tactics for a while now. And in some ways, that's good because some of the systems have gotten more polished over time. But in other ways, that's kind of bad because the gameplay does tend to get a little bit stale over time. All right, so let's start out by talking about what I think were some of the best things in this particular set. And I'm going to start by saying I think that the overall trait and unit design was pretty good in this set, and that has not always been the case in some of the sets, but I do think that overall trait and unit design was pretty good. There were a lot of interesting units that were added to this set, had new abilities that we hadn't necessarily seen before, and were fun to use. Not as many things that were like dull, not as many dull repetitive reprints that we had seen from some of the past sets, but definitely some of the 4 and 5 cost units had some fun stuff that we hadn't necessarily seen before. So, for example, I'm just going to run down the list of some of these. Aphelios having the 3 different guns was a pretty neat idea. Didn't necessarily work, I think, quite the way that the developers intended in practice because most of the set, one of those 3 guns was definitely better than the other 2 options, but still a neat concept and definitely a fun unit to play around. Good for capping out late game boards. Mordekaiser having the big building that dropped on the whole board was fun to have. Leona having the single target damage, really good for tank busting. Kind of interesting, a unit that was like kind of a tank herself, but then also good at busting tanks on the other team. Pretty interesting stuff. And then what did we get? We got Talia having her ult from League of Legends. Like that in and of itself, maybe a little bit less interesting. Pretty much the same as like a Lux Ultimate from some prior sets, but still pretty interesting. Something that we hadn't necessarily seen before. I do think she was a fun unit to have in the set because she was an AP carry that gave the backline access in a way that many of the other units in the set didn't have. I'll also throw out Nunu as well. Nunu pushing the Robo Ball that got bigger and bigger and bigger as the longer he was out there pushing the thing. I think that that was a really creative trait design, definitely something that we hadn't seen before. There were some other champs that were a little bit like that. I'm thinking of Aurelian Soul from set 3, where he was like the spaceship, somewhat like that in a way, but we definitely did not have Nunu, our champion, quite like that pushed a ball around that got bigger the longer the round went on. I don't think Nunu was maybe played quite as much as would have been ideal for this particular set. I think that the designers probably wish he had been seen a little bit more action, but still a fun unit to be sure, and a very creative design that we hadn't seen before. So overall, pretty good in that respect. Not a lot of dud units, not a lot of dud traits. Just a quick word about what's going on in this game. This was played on right when one of the most recent patches came out, and I had seen that Talia was performing well in the data. Talia and Spell Slingers were performing well in the data, so I was like, all right, I'm going to force a Talia game and just see how well it goes, since it looked like Talia ended up getting buffed in this particular patch. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to force a Spell Slinger Talia board and see how it goes. But I've already got some pretty good setup here. I managed to get the early 2-star Lux, although she just tossed her ult at absolutely nothing. One of the reasons why Lux is not really the unit you want to use as your main carry in this particular set. And I also have Ludens, which is a good augment if you're going to be running a spellcasting setup. Not as good for Talia specifically, because Talia has high mana cost, so she doesn't trigger Ludens that often. But still, good for spellcasting setups in general. Okay. By the way, then Lux once again throws her ult at a unit she's not attacking. So yeah, good stuff there, Lux. Okay, so I talked a little bit about unit design, trait design. I think that the traits were pretty good in this set as well. not as many dud traits as there were in some of the other sets. They brought back some things that were popular in other sets, like the Brawler trait. I think that Brawler was unchanged from some of the previous sets. That came back. Duelist was a fun trait from some of the previous sets, the stacking attack speed. Definitely saw some fun 8 Duelist boards. I know in Double Up, JDP El Grillo liked to play the 8 Duelist boards, and we had some success with that. The other more creative traits, adding things like Prankster, the one that would spawn the target dummy, very interesting trait. Sometimes people could try to play Jinx and the Zoe up on the front line just for the Prankster dummy, which was kind of an interesting risk-reward, frontlining them to try to get the dummy. And then if you could get up to Prankster 3, it would stun. That was a neat concept for a trait. I also like the Recon trait. I don't know if it 100% worked the way intended, but the whole notion that the Recon units would dash away when targeted. Oftentimes they dashed right into the middle of the enemy team, but it was still kind of a fun concept overall. And then I did also like the implementation of Hacker trait, the way that you could send one unit into the back line with the Hacker Rim. Definitely different than what we've seen. This was the very first set that did not have Assassins as a trait, and I don't think it really hurt the set particularly badly not having Assassins as a trait. So it was kind of fun to have a set that didn't have Assassins so that you could be played around that. Here off the carousel, I'm going to take a sword because it's half of a Spear of Shojin. I already have the tier for Lux. Now I've got Spear of Shojin, and I've also got a LeBlanc here. I can't remember if I actually just play the LeBlanc on my board or not. But in any case, I think I opt to sell just so I can make the Shojin here. Let's see, what did I do in this game? It's been over a week since I played this one. I'm trying to remember if I just played this unit or not. All right, I played the Lee Sin for Brawler trait and then did, in fact, make the Spear of Shojin. Okay. The other trait that I did want to highlight was the Admin trait, which I think was the best trait that they created in this particular set. Admin programs a custom configuration per player each game. It was a pretty difficult trait to use because what you were going to get would be different in every single game. And there were many, many, many different possibilities that you could get. I think that there was about 60 or so different possibilities that you could get from the different admin options. And then the one that produced gold didn't even appear as an option unless you got up to admin 4. So it was a difficult trait to use, but in some of my favorite games from this set was when I was able to get a good admin and then build a team around that. Some of the more popular ones being if you would permanently get additional health on different conditions. If you could get it in play early, you could just start stacking up maximum health to a crazy extent. I think in one game I got a Soraka up to like 4,000 health with that. And then other ones where you would get additional AP when units died. I think I had a game where I had target dummies that were all dying to give Soraka additional AP. And then there was a 6 admin game that I put up as a live commentary where there was some, where I had got the team-wide healing, and then I also got first aid kits, so the entire team was healing for like 450 health every 6 seconds, and it was just absolutely absurd until the super late game. So anyway, a fun trait. I don't think it was played that much in this set, just because it was difficult to use. It certainly was a higher skill cap than a lot of the other traits, but it was a neat one, and I'm disappointed that it's actually going to be taken out in the mid-set update. Kind of disappointing that one's going to get removed. And I also enjoyed Anima Squad as well, I should say. I did have fun with that one. Enjoyed the fact that you could stack up the additional health and just see how many stacks you could get by the end of the game. I did think it was kind of silly that the Anima Squad units would stun themselves for half a second when they got a stack of fame to pose. I don't know that really was necessary, but I did have fun stacking up the fame in a lot of games, particularly in Double Up. I think in one Double Up game we got up to 160 fame or something crazy like that, and I don't know. It was just anytime there's a chase trait like that stacks up over the course of the game, it tends to be a lot of fun. Now, the most unique trait that they added in this particular setup were the threats. And I think that this was a creative idea as well. Basically, units that don't have traits, so they are splashable in any team composition. And all the traits, all the various different threats had something that they were good at to one extent or another. So I have a Cho'Gath in the shop right now. Cho'Gath being the magic-resistant tank. And then Rammus was the armor tank. And Zac was the health tank. And then you'd have units like Vel'Koz, who could shut down single target on the enemy team, had like a single target stun, and Aurelian Soul that had a health debuff for the other team, etc., etc., etc. Or a healing debuff, I should say, excuse me. So they all did different things, and I really like that idea because it did add additional flexibility to team comps. You could deliberately pick certain units, and then you could plug in what you were missing based on what threat that you had. So it was a neat idea for a setup, and I think that they mostly worked pretty well. Now, to some extent, it may not have worked because the threats were either too weak to be playable in some cases, or they were oppressively strong in other cases. So there's a little bit of that, but I think that the balance was reasonably good on the threats. And people would often do exactly what was intended, to just throw in like a random threat to the comp if you needed some additional frontline or you needed some additional damage or whatnot. They were most frequently played with recons, with the recon Kaisa setup, and then also just shoved into late game boards with the more expensive threats. I will say probably the biggest mistake when it came to the threats is about halfway through the set, the designers gave big buffs to Urgot and to Fiddlesticks. And this was a big mistake because it made them both just too playable. You can't have a situation where the best 5-cost units are threats that don't have traits, because that just means that they're an auto slam onto every single board, which is not interesting. But unfortunately, that's pretty much what happened in the game. Is the units were overbuffed and they were just made so that they were always worth playing in all situations, and that was not very interesting. So yeah, in any case, that was where we ended up, and that was pretty much what we saw for the rest of the set. In any case, though, so yeah, overall, I think the threats worked reasonably well, but the designers definitely overbuffed Fiddlesticks and Urgot. And I think people are getting pretty tired of them by the end of the set, because every late game board is always playing those units because they're just too good. They provide lots of crowd control. Urgot provides additional econ for your team as well. And they're threats, so they can go onto absolutely any board whatsoever. So not such a great fit. Speaking of balance, I do think that the balance was overall pretty good throughout this set. Now, people may object to that because it certainly wasn't perfect. This set did feature some very long-running patches, particularly over the winter holidays break, but that never really bothered me that much. Having this like really, really lengthy period where we were on in-between patches, because that allowed time for the meta to kind of shake out. And even though, yes, there was a long period where we had the month-long patch with Yuumi being too strong, Jax being too strong, there were still other options that were playable in that patch. There was still the potential to play things like duelists and like admin boards, and there were some other things you could play even in that patch, which we were stuck on for ages and ages and ages and ages. So I think that overall the balance was pretty solid through over the course of this set. And the biggest thing that helped that is that the developers just didn't issue that many patches. This was a very lightly patched set. There weren't a lot of hot fixes. There weren't a lot of B patches. Honestly, it felt like the designers were kind of lazy when it came to this patch. They just kind of left things alone. But I think that that was probably to the benefit of this game. It's one of the things that I've argued many, many, many times over the years for Teamfight Tactics. I think that the game patches way too frequently, and just leaving things alone to just let them kind of sit over time, I think was actually a pretty good fit for the set. So overall, the balance was not too bad. It was not like it was certainly not like set 7, where the developers constantly had to rush out hot fixes over and over and over again because they kept breaking the game in various different stupid ways. They mostly took a light touch this patch, or over the course of this set, and just kind of left things alone. And I was pretty happy with that. I was glad that they largely just let things sit like that. So by and large, I think that was to the benefit of this particular set. And at least if you weren't one of those people who needs constant changes, I think that it led to a pretty decent spot. All right, well, on this carousel here, I see that there's a Talia with a tier. I'm going to be happy to take that. I don't know quite what I'm going to do with this tier, but I can do something with it. Could always do like a Hand of Justice for some healing, potentially, or something else. I don't really want to make a blue buff. I actually am suffering from an excess of tiers right now. I already have a Shojin and a blue buff, and now I got another tier as well. So for once, I actually have too many tiers in my spellcasting board. I was deciding, do I just move out of the Lux and play Talia? And with the way Lux has been missing some of these ultimates, I was like, yeah, I think I'll just go ahead and do that. And then I'll put the Lux back in on my board on level up and see if I can get up to 4 spell slingers. I'd actually like to get up to 6 spell slingers eventually, but I'm going to try to get back up to 4 soon enough, because I do want to try to get Star Guardian in the near future as well. All right, getting back to our larger points for the set, I did want to mention one final thing here where I'm talking about things that I think were relatively good, and that is the addition of the item anvils at the end of stage 4, and then you also get them, I think, at the end of stage 5 and stage 6. I think that these were a good addition to the game. They're kind of a middle ground between having the treasure dragons from set 7 and then having no choice whatsoever on what items you got from the late game minion rounds. I think it was a good medium ground between the two of them. The old system where you would just get something completely random, definitely think that that was maybe not ideal, because it was very possible to just get stuff that didn't fit your team composition whatsoever, and then you'd be left hurting for items that you couldn't use. However, in set 7, I did think that the treasure dragons probably gave a little bit too much choice. You could literally get whatever item you wanted if you were willing to roll an additional amount of gold. The item anvils give you, they gave you a choice of 3 components, later buffed to giving you a choice of 4 components. And then the full item anvils would give a choice of 5 different items. So again, I think a pretty happy medium ground where you have some choice, but you also just can't get literally anything that you want. I think it was a good mechanic overall. I think it, like I said, struck a pretty good medium ground between the different options available and let people have some flexibility, but not just let them get anything under the sun whatsoever. All right, here I'm up against 2-star Mech Draven, who has the admin emblem, interestingly enough. And that's going to be a loss. So I actually lost 4 out of 5 rounds in stage 3, but most of them were pretty close losses, so I didn't end up taking too much damage. Bigger concern is that there's 2 people that are like on very long win streaks and have a ton of health, so going to make the rest of that lobby a little bit difficult trying to catch up to them. I've been playing through Gadgeteen Trade here, trying to find more Annies, but I haven't really been finding them, unfortunately. So I think I end up itemizing Alistar as my main frontline tank in this game because I just did not find Annies. All right, anyway, so we talked about some of the things that I thought were good in this particular set. Now let's talk about maybe things that weren't quite so good, things that didn't work out to the extent that I think the developers might have intended, or things that just were a bit of a letdowns as far as how this set went. All right, so first up, we have to talk about the main feature of this set, and those were the champion augments. That was the big advertised feature, the fact that this set was going to have champion augments, and then the issue was, well, did they really work? I'd have to say I don't think that they quite worked out as intended. I think that they were, by and large, kind of a disappointment overall. So what do I mean by that? Well, the whole notion of the champion augments was that they provided these different options for your team, whereby you would get augments that were tied to a specific champion, and then each one of them would have both a carry option and a support augment. And the idea being that you would kind of customize your team based around which champion augments you are getting and kind of go from there. They're the big advertised new feature of this particular set. I don't think that they quite worked out as intended, and for a couple of reasons for that. The first reason being that they just didn't really change up the gameplay in meaningful ways. The only ones that kind of did that were the 1-cost champion augments, maybe to a lesser extent the 2-cost champion augments. So there were some that did kind of shift things up. I'm thinking of, for example, if you would get like the Nasus stacks on stacks augment, which was Nasus would get infinite stacking on his ability. Every time he would use his ability, he would get additional damage on his attack, and it would just stack up forever over the course of the game. So like I'm thinking of that as one thing that was a potential change. That thing was something that actually did change up the gameplay. Or if you could get something like Poppy's augment that gave her her carry augment that gave her the extra shielding, gave her 200 additional armor, and it would cause her shield to do enough damage that she could start one-shotting units in the back lines. Like, that would then turn the unit into a legitimate carry that you could plan your whole team around. So I enjoyed having games where I got the chance to do that, to play around like a 1-cost unit that maybe normally wouldn't be a carry, but then with these augments kind of could become one. But that was definitely not the norm. Most of the time, people would just play the same units in the same teams, and you would just get like some kind of minor benefit from the champion augment in a way that did not really change up how you played the game at all. Now, this game, we ended up not having a champion augment. This is the rare 10% of games that didn't have a champion augment. But, like, imagine if I had gotten the champion augment that, I don't know. I don't know Talia's augments that well. But, like, Zoe, I know one of her augments causes her to toss out 2 bubbles instead of 1. Excuse me. I mean, it's like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but it doesn't really change how you play Zoe. I mean, it's like you want to make her a carry, but like, okay, she tosses 2 bubbles instead of 1. That doesn't really alter things in any meaningful way. Because I get lucky, by the way, and hit 2-star Talia super early here. Um, in addition to that, what Zoe's her support augment was she would put like 3 units on the other team to sleep for the first couple seconds of the fight. It's like, okay, I mean, that's nice, but it doesn't really change the game in any meaningful way. And most of the other champion augments were like that too. I'm thinking of like Vayne's support augment, where she got a Edge of Night item, and then anyone holding an Edge of Night item would get 30% additional attack speed. It's like, okay, great, I got a free item. And if I make more Edge of Nights, I get a little additional attack speed. It's like, okay. But like none of those things really shift up the gameplay in any meaningful way. It just didn't really change things all that much. Not in the way that some of the initial Hextech augments did. I'm thinking back to when in set 6 the first Hextech augments appeared, and a lot of them really did change how you would play the game. I remember thinking like, oh man, I got level up augment for my opening prismatic. Now I get 7 XP instead of 4 when I level up. This is really cool. I want to play more games to test this out. Or like, I've got built different augment. Now I get rewarded for not playing traits. Like, I want to have as few traits in as possible under built different. Like, that really shakes up how you play the game. That's something new and interesting that wasn't really there before. In a way that doesn't, I don't feel like the champion augments really did much of that. Like they were, they were fine. They were, interesting, I guess, in their own way. But for the most part, they didn't really shift things around that much, except maybe like the Lee Sin cleansing, whatever it's called, cleansing safeguard that broke the game because it was possible for 2 Lee Sins. You could play 2 Lee Sins and they would just keep cleansing one another's CC and healing each other endlessly. Okay, that shifted up the gameplay, but not in a way that was healthy or fun for anyone. So that was kind of the first problem. The next problem is the champion augments ended up being too manipulatable. What I mean by that is the first champion augment, the one that appeared on stage 2, was always random, so that couldn't be manipulated. But the later champion augments were not completely random. They were tailored to your team, and they kind of had to be because otherwise people would just get champion augments that didn't fit their team at all, which wouldn't have been particularly fun. But people figured out pretty quickly how the logic behind this worked. Basically, the game would roll certain cost tiers, so like for the stage 3 augment, you would get either 2 cost, 3 cost, or 4 cost champions for the stage 3 augment. So first it would select the cost tier, and then it would pick units based on what traits you had in. So like right now I would get units that were either Spellslingers or Gadgetines or Oxforce or what's the last trait I have in? Heart. So it would limit it to those traits as far as what I could get. So in particular, you would see lots and lots of people that would like contort their board in like all sorts of bizarre ways right before a champion augment was about to appear so that they could increase the odds of getting the champion augments that they wanted from the upcoming champion augment. Now, you never were guaranteed to have a champion augment appear, but like you would have people like shoving garbage units on the board on like stage 3-1 and 4-1 right before the champion augments were about to appear, just so they could try to manipulate which traits would show up. I mean, this was not a good situation for the gameplay. And Riot's solution to that was to just give you 4 champion rerolls. Yeah, 4. So that people could reroll over and over and over again to the point where they were almost guaranteed of getting what they wanted. But I don't think that that was really a good solution either. Like just letting people reroll until they could force what it is that they wanted out of the champion rerolls. Not great. Not a great solution. In particular because nothing about how the system worked was ever explained in-game at all. Like the logic of how the champs were selected for champion augments was never documented anywhere within the game. So it was purely stuff that you had to understand based on out-of-game knowledge, which is not really great for the health of the game. And yeah, so just one of those things, unfortunately, that did not really work for anyone other than expert players. And the 4 rerolls thing, I don't know. It feels like it tilted way too far towards people being able to force what they wanted as opposed to people playing the hand that they were dealt. I was not a big fan, but it's just one of those changes that they insisted on doing. And I guess it's here to stay for the remainder of the set. But yeah, you can reroll up to 4 times to try to force what you want out of the champion rerolls. Although if you roll too many times and go past things, the same champion augment won't appear more than once. All right, here, as far as what's going on here, I'm hoping to find a Tarek, or not Tarek, geez. Made that mistake so many times. I'm hoping to find an Echo here. I really want to replace Lee Sin with Echo so I can get Star Guardian trait in and also get the Prankster trait in. Now I'm going to push to level, since I haven't found him yet, I'm going to try to push to level 9 since I have the early 2-star Talia. And then I'm going to try to get Janna on my board for 6 Spell Slingers. And that's pretty much the board is put in Janna at level 9 and then take out the Lee Sin and replace with Echo. And that's pretty much the board that I'm planning on playing here. Maybe we'll move into threats later on, but that's kind of like the core setup that I'm looking to play. All right. So as I said, I don't think they'll feel like the champion augments really particularly worked out the way that developers weren't intending here. And I don't know. I don't think that they were really that much fun. So this is also kind of a problem for the set overall because I don't feel like set 8 really did enough to create something new. This is one of the things that I talked about in, I think before the set began, is I was trying to think about what does the set need to add in order to get people back. People who have left TFT, maybe people who would like to play TFT in the future. What sort of things does it need to add to grab players and rope them in? Set 4 had the Chosen mechanic, which was a huge success. It led to a big surge in popularity for the game. Set 6 had the Hextech augments. Again, huge success. Did a humongous job of bringing people back to the game. Also helped that there was the Arcane series on Netflix that roped a lot of people in too. But what did Set 8 have? Well, Set 8th edition was Champion Augments. And it's like, okay. I mean, they were fine. Like, they were fine, I guess. They were fine. But I don't feel like people who weren't already playing TFT were like, oh man, I've got to go back and play more TFT because I want to play more with the champion augments. I don't feel like it was that big of a draw, unfortunately. So I do feel like it was a bit of a miss in that regard. Set 7 had the dragons, which clearly were not the solution. Set 8 had the champion augments. I just still feel like they need something bigger. Like they need something more if they're going to really cause another surge in popularity. I've looked at the mid-set update. The previews are out now. What they have there is not going to do it either. They're just mid-set update just kind of shuffles around some traits and units. Looks fine. I'm sure if you're a core TFT player, you'll be satisfied. But I don't think this is going to do much to really break people out of to get people out, to bring people back who have left the game, or to get people excited again. I think that they need to come up with something new, and this really was not it. This was more of like a placeholder type of thing. We'll see if they have something bigger in store for Set 9 upcoming. I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, this is a close round, but unfortunately I do end up losing this one, which is a shame because it would have been nice to keep winning as I was econing towards level 9 there, but I do come up a little bit short. All right, other things that I wanted to talk about. So I think that this set also suffered from poor visual quality. By the way, here I ended up taking a Janna just so I can play Janna. I was trying to lock down the 6 spell slinger. I take Janna with a Titans, which is a bad item for Janna. But I was just hoping to get a Janna. And I was thinking that this game wasn't going to go on much longer, which turned out to be a mistake. The game actually ended up going on quite a ways longer. But I'm going to go ahead and play the Janna, go to level 9. I'm hoping to bully people out of the game by getting to level 9 with the 6 spell slingers early. And yeah, we're going to look to clump up around the Janna. This is, which Janna is this? I think it's the Windy Weather, if I remember correctly, which is probably her best one. And I'll just keep stacking the Talias, because hey, I've already got 6. I might as well make an attempt to see if I can get some more. All right, so next up then, as I was saying, I think that the set suffered from having some poor poor visual quality and aesthetics. So what do I mean by that is I think it was too hard to tell things apart in this set. Now, if you have played a ton of this set, that probably isn't going to be an issue, because if you play this game for enough hours, you can tell everything apart, and it stops being that big of an issue. But I know that when I first started playing this set, it was extremely difficult to tell some of the units apart. In particular, the Laser Core and the Mech Prime units were very similar in terms of their design. Like, very, very, very similar in terms of their design. They just end up looking really similar to one another. So I did not like the fact that they looked so similar. This was another one of my complaints all the way back in set 3. I didn't like set 3 because there wasn't enough visual distinction between a lot of the units. All of those futuristic units in set 3, they all looked very similar. They were all futuristic person in sunglasses holding a sword, or a futuristic person holding a gun. And I felt like there was way too much of that in this set as well. Now, again, I understand the theme was like superheroes and monsters. That was the goal for this particular set, but it was still very difficult to tell a lot of these units apart, or at least I had trouble. Maybe I'm just a grumpy old man in that respect, but I do think that there was a real lack of visual clarity throughout most of this set. And as I said, if you played the set a ton, then maybe, it didn't become an issue. Certainly if I played it enough that by the end, I had this stuff sorted out, but it definitely makes it harder to learn the game, and it does make it harder to see what the heck's going on most of the time as well. So it is little bit frustrating to have something like that happen. Some of this is also just my own personal preference. I don't really like the futuristic look on a lot of these things. I definitely prefer other theming mechanisms for just League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics gameplay in general. So the superhero thing didn't really do it for me. I didn't really like the way that the set looked all that much. But your mileage may vary. I know maybe some people get more of a kick out of that stuff than I do. All right, so we covered that. And then the last thing I want to cover is this is something that's a more general point, but it really did disappoint me to have some of these things that we had been talking about for a long time confirmed. And what by that I mean that the fact that the set is balanced around the use of cosmetics. All right. By the way, here I actually end up making a mistake. I end up moving. End up moving out of the Zoe so I can play Syndra. But this drops Gadgettine, which is kind of a mistake. I should have kept the Zoe on my board because I was actually getting a lot of value out of Gadgettine. Particularly for the Alistar, who was getting the Gadgettine defensive bonus. So I think I would have been better off dropping Lee Sin. That I should have probably dropped the Lee Sin there instead. By the way, I still have not found an Echo yet for my board. But I should have kept Zoe on the board because I needed her for Gadgettine, and also so I would have the hacker trait, or not hacker trait, I did need her for hacker trait, but so I would have prankster trait when I actually find Echo later on. So I think dropping Zoe was a bit of a mistake here. Not that it's going to matter for this round, but just trying to think about what I could do for the future. Okay. Anyway, going back to that point though. So the game is balanced around cosmetics, and that's something we've discussed on our internal Discord quite a bit in the past, but it really became clear in this set that the game is heavily, and I mean heavily, balanced around cosmetics in a way that I don't think I had really thought about before. And that's because the designers just were very open that they were making balance changes, not due to what was actually good in terms of balance for the game, not in terms of like what would actually be good for the health of the game, but purely in terms of what will drive, what they think will drive player interest. And in particular, that would be driving player interest amongst the most diehard members of the fan base. So if you're curious about what I mean about that, this is, of course, a free-to-play game. I understand that. It is a game that does not cost anything up front, and then Teamfight Tactics makes money by selling cosmetics. That's always been the case. That's not a new revelation here or anything. But the developers were pretty open in this set that they were making their balance decisions not over what was actually good for the set, but purely based on what was going to move more cosmetic merchandise. So they balance based on what people who haven't played the game a lot would most want to, or excuse me, people who do play the game a lot would want to see the most. So when they are making balancing decisions, they pretty much said, like, look, Yumi's been strong for a long time. We're going to over-nerf Yumi, and we're going to over-nerf her deliberately just because we need to shake up the gameplay. And it's like, this isn't about the health of the game. It's just about shaking things up. So they were very clear that the goal was just to shuffle balance, to balance Thrash, in the words that we've heard before. And the reason why they do that is the people who play the game for 10 hours a day are the people who are most likely to be the whales in the store. People are familiar with this term. Whales are the people who drop immense amounts of money on cosmetic purchases. There's a small number of people who absolutely will spend thousands of dollars in the store buying the little legends and buying all the little extra stages and whatnot in all the loot boxes. Excuse me. And because these are the people that drop so much money on the game, the balance is based around them. It's not based around what the average player might want. It's based around what the people who are playing the game for hundreds of hours a day, not per day, but hundreds of game per set, are most likely to buy. And so they get bored quickly. So the balance has to be shuffled constantly to appeal to those players. And that's pretty much what the developers admitted they were doing, is they were shuffling things around because they had to appease those players who just play the game over and over and over and over and over again. And that was really just depressing to me. Like I had kind of surmised that was likely the case in the past, but they just flat out admitted in this set that's like, yeah, that's what the balancing is. It's we're gonna make things stronger or weaker because we have to shuffle the balance. It's not about healthy gameplay. It's about just shuffling balance as fast as possible to appeal to people who play the game all day, every day, because they're going to get bored if we don't do that. So, as someone who doesn't play 10,000 games a day, someone who probably plays like 100 games over the course of a set and that's it, that was pretty sad. It really hurt my faith in like the setup for this game. That they were just pretty open about doing that. So anyway, by the way, this round also pretty sad. Look at that, Aphelios goes down to literally 1% health, and then Oxforce triggers and manages to survive and then wins the round. I was like, really? Really? Now that person had one last stand, so or whatever it is that allows you to survive on 1 HP. So they wouldn't have been eliminated anyway, but still, it was a little disappointing that I wasn't quite able to win that round, considering their Aphelios went down to 1 HP. All right, though, I did manage to 2-star my whole board. I think my board's pretty strong here. I think I have a great setup. But is it stronger than this person that's been win streaking on 4 sure shot? Probably not, because 4 sure shot does cap out higher in this particular setup. I also made some choices that were designed to that were more playing around a top 4 finish than actually winning the game per se, when actually winning the lobby, such as taking the Janna off carousel so that I could try to get Janna in place sooner, as opposed to going for an item that would be more useful for my setup here. And as I said, this board just doesn't cap out quite as high as the person who's playing Aphelios. But it looks like they were able to win their ghost round here. By the way, I believe both of these people have like the one last stand, so they're both still alive on 1 HP here. All right. Anyway, though, so just to try and wrap things. Oh, by the way, look at this person's interface. It's like Aphelios 2 and then Aphelios 3, and I was like, what? Aphelios 3, what? So they were sitting on 6 Aphelioses, but somehow they went from 6 to 9 in 1 round. I don't know how they managed to go from 6 to 9 in 1 round. I would have held Aphelioses if I had seen them at 7 or 8. By the way, this person also took a Talia off the carousel. I don't know if you saw that, but on the stage 6 carousel, they grabbed the Talia because they saw that I was on 7 Talias. So, yeah, they were denying me the Talia 3-star, which is a little bit sad, because I got pretty close. I could have denied them the Aphelios. I just didn't know that they were that close. As I said, they jumped from 6 to 9 in 1 round. So I don't know quite what happened there, how they managed to have that happen. So I was like, oh, well, that's it for this game. I mean, I'm not beating Aphelios 3. I think my board's pretty strong, but I'm not beating Aphelios 3. This person just said, I farm underground. So, yeah, I wish we had actual replays. I would love to go back and see how exactly they managed to do this. But yeah, maybe if I can hit Talia 3-star, maybe she could one-shot Aphelios, although that won't work because it has Oxforce trait, so we're not going to be able to get the one-shot. But, well, at least we get the hilarity of watching Aphelios 3-star. I don't know quite what Aphelios 3-star does, but it looks like his ability goes up by 8-fold damage when he fires it. So he's just going to get his cast off here. And, well, there goes my team. There goes my team. So, yeah, okay. That's a thing that happened. So that's another reason why I wanted to cast this game, is so we get the chance to watch the Aphelios 3-star here. I guess they just managed to get enough underground stuff that they were able to make the 3-star version of the unit. Oh, well. Looks like I came up 1 short on the Talia. So anyway, just by ways of wrapping this up, as you watch Aphelios 3-star murder my team yet again here, because there's no chance of winning. I overall enjoyed this set. The thing is, though, I think I'm starting to just get a little bit tired of Teamfight Tactics. I don't think it's doing quite enough to entertain me, and that's partly just me having played this game a whole lot. I'm not really that interested in the upcoming set 8.5. It doesn't seem like it's really going to shake that much up or really change all that much. There he goes. My team just absolutely gets exploded. I don't feel like it's really going to change all that much, so I'm not sure that I'm going to spend that much time with it. I mean, we'll see. Maybe a month from now, I'll be like, oh man, I'd really like to play some Teamfight Tactics, and I'll get back into it again. But I don't know. This set was fine. Like it was fine. I hate to keep saying that, but like it wasn't. It was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. I just feel like Teamfight Tactics needs something new, and I don't think it really delivered on that. So more of a holding pattern than anything else. In any case, though, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, care, folks.